Blender for Noobs.
Hello, this is Dan Nobles and welcome to Blender for Noobs. In this video tutorial, we are going to be creating an Angry Bird, modeling an Angry Bird, but we're also going to do it freestyle, which should be interesting. Now to do this, freestyle doesn't really work with cycles, so this will probably be one of the few times that you see me change this back to the Blender render, because that way we can use the freestyle. If you go over to your render settings here, you will now see this freestyle box, and you can go ahead and check that if you like. Okay, so to start out with, I'm going to go ahead and select this default cube and X delete it. And what you want to do to prepare is you want to get a reference image of the Angry Bird. So the way I did it is I went and I Googled Angry Bird front view or Angry Bird front, and I came up with an image, and I'll show you that now. So I'm going to use this pane right here as my front view, so I'm going to hit 1 on the keyboard. And in order to bring in our reference image, once you have that downloaded somewhere, you want to hit N, and you want to go to your background images, check that, drop this down. We're going to do an add image, and we're going to change this view to front, and open the image wherever you save that image. Okay, and there's our front view of our image. So we're going to go ahead and close this, hit N. Okay, before we begin, let's go ahead and save our file. So let's do a file save as, and I'm going to make a folder called Angry Bird. Create new directory, and I'm going to name it Angry Bird _ v1 for version 1, and hit enter twice. So as you can see, the Angry Bird is actually sort of a cartoon character. It's got this nice defined edge around everything, and that's why I chose to go ahead and use the freestyle with this. I thought it would be a good idea to throw that in there as well. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to make the body first, so I'm going to do a Shift A. I'm going to choose Mesh on UV Sphere, and let's hit T on our Tools menu right after we create that, and just check your vertices. I'm going to leave it at 32 and 16, which is the default. T out of that menu. And I'm going to rotate this sphere 90 degrees along the X, so I'm going to do a RX90 on the keyboard and hit enter. Okay, and let's go ahead and scale that up. And you just want to get it like the general size. I'm going to hit Z to go into wireframe mode. And probably something about right there. Now we do need to adjust the size to the size of our image, so I'm going to hit Tab to go into edit mode. And I'm going to choose turn on proportional editing, and I'm just going to enable it there. And I'm going to come over here and just grab one of these vertices, and if I hit G for grab, you'll see the area of influence, and if you roll up on your mouse wheel, that's how much of this geometry that it's affecting. So if we put it about right there and just G move, you can see that it's kind of pulling the other vertices as well, which is what we want. So I'm just selecting these and I'm dragging them out. Just trying to mimic the basic shape of the Angry Bird here. As you can see, he's extremely angry. Maybe he'll feel better once we get the shape correct. Okay, so something about like that, but as you can see, the side view is not very good right now. And we kind of have to guess what the side view looks like, because if you look at these Angry Birds, if you look at videos and things, they're really mostly just 2D drawings. They're not really 3D characters, so we're doing something that isn't really normal, making a 3D character from a 2D character. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I turn off occlude here and B box select all of this back here, and I'm going to S scale, but I'm going to turn this proportional editing up some more. So I'm going to hit G and just make sure I get more of this here, and then S scale. That's probably a little bit too much influence. Bring that down a little bit, scale it down, something like that, and you can kind of bring it in a little bit. And then as you can see though, when I did that, it's changed the whole size of it. So I'm going to A select all and just scale it back up here. And let's go ahead and tab back into object mode and add a modifier. We're going to add a subsurf modifier. And I'm just going to bump this up to 2, hit my T menu and choose smooth. So it's nice and smooth. And as you can see, we got some bumps in there from the geometry change. So I'm going to tab back into edit mode. I'm going to go into W, hit the W key, and go into my specials menu, and I'm going to do a shade smooth. I'm sorry, not shade smooth. Smooth. And again, smooth that out. And if you have your T menu open, you can actually bump up the number of smooths here as well. So you can see that's making it nice and even as far as the geometry. We got our basic shape the way we want it, but we do need to continue to size a little bit, scale it up. So S to scale, and let's go ahead and start moving some of this geometry again, and probably have a bigger area of influence than what we had before. Okay, yeah, that's what I want. So just kind of repeat a little bit, G move these out to where they need to be. And you can see with that larger area of influence that we have, it's not really creating that sharp edge. It is a little bit, there's a little bit of edge there, but it's not bad. So that's pretty close. Maybe bring these down a little bit. Okay, that's good. And just looking at it here, it's a little bumpy, so go back and edit, select all, go to the W menus and do another smooth, and just scale it up a little bit. Okay, Z back into the solid view, and that is pretty much the shape that we want, except, let me make sure, it's actually the opposite shape I want, because I changed the wrong side there, but that's okay. I'm just going to do a RZ 180, just flip it completely around. That way this sort of flatter edge is toward the front. Okay, back into our Z menu so we can see what we're doing. And while we have this selected, let's go ahead and add a material. Let's come up here and add a material, go new, and I'm just going to call this red. And select this material here. And you can actually make it whatever color red you want. This is good for me. Or if you have a better photo than I do, or image, reference image, you can actually go in here and use a little dropper and just grab it there. And I'm going to bump this specular down because it's not shiny feathers, it's just regular feathers. So we'll leave it like that. Okay, so that's our basic body. Z back into solid view. Okay. And T, get rid of those tools. I'm going to do a control up arrow to go full screen so I can see what I'm doing. Tab back into edit mode. Come down here, I'm going to choose faces, and I'm going to create these feathers here. So I'm going to imagine that the feathers are like right here. Oops. That'll be one of them. So I'm just going to E extrude extrude again, and just pull it back a little bit, rotate it, scale it down a little bit. And just kind of move it around so it should be in its correct place. And I need to turn off my proportional editing because I don't need that anymore. It's kind of affecting my whole body of the bird here. So that'll be one feather, and then maybe we'll just take the one face here for the next one. Extrude. Go into Control 3 view. Just move that back. Maybe extrude, scale it down a little bit. Okay, and this looks way too big, so I'm just going to scale that down, move it over, maybe rotate it. Okay, so one. Okay, now these feathers look like they're way over like that, but actually another picture that I had, which was like this, showed them pretty much like they're going straight back like that. I mean, it's just really up to you how you want to do it, but I'm going to leave mine like this. Z back into our wireframe mode. And let's go ahead and work on these eyes. So what I'm going to do for the eyes, I'm going to do a Shift A, let's create another sphere. Actually, I need to tab back into object mode because I want this to be a separate object. Shift A, mesh, and we're going to choose UV sphere. And I'm going to leave it at the default size, but I am going to rotate it again. RX90, enter. And let's go into 3 side view. Just move it forward so we can see what we're doing. Tab in edit mode. And let's go ahead and select box select all of this and X delete faces. So we're only left with really that much. And one back into our front view. A select this. G move it down. And oops. One back into our front view. So now we need to kind of manipulate this so that it fits this eye. I mean, this part right here looks pretty good, but we need to do something here. So I'm going to go back into my vertex mode. And let's go ahead and turn on our proportional editing again, enable. And that's way too big, so I'm just going to size this down. I hit G, by the way, in order to easily get this circle, be able to see this circle. Maybe about right there. And let's see what it's going to do. If I move this over. And not too bad, I guess. Maybe make it a little bit more so I can drag more of that geometry. So it's not completely stretching out all the vertices. Okay, so we want to get them close, and then you can go ahead and turn this back off, disable. And then I'm just going to select a few of these here and just adjust them back so that it's pretty close to where it needs to be. Okay, what does this look like? Not too bad. Probably go ahead and just G, move some of these vertices. Okay, these ones behind don't matter too much, but I just want to get a nice, fairly smooth arc there. Okay, so that's what it looks like. Tab back in object mode, Z for solid, go into 7 top view, and you can see that it's the origin of the geometry is not quite where it needs to be, so I'm going to hit T and go here to origin and choose origin to geometry. That'll put it in the middle, and I'm just going to move this kind of where it needs to be and maybe even rotate it a little bit. I don't want it to actually go into the geometry of the body because when you do your freestyle, it's going to depend on actually seeing these edges, not inside, not pushed into the body in order to do an outline. So I don't want it to go too far with it. Okay, now let's go ahead and Control up arrow back to our menu here, and let's add modifier, add a subdivision surface, give that 2 views, and go ahead and smooth it. Okay, so now we're going to make the other eye, and luckily we don't have to do all that. All we need to do is duplicate this. So we're going to do a Shift D to duplicate. Actually, let's not do that. Let me X, get rid of that. Choose this, tab into edit mode, and A, select all, and then do a Shift D to duplicate that. Otherwise that won't work quite right. So move it over here, and then we're going to reverse scale this. So I'm going to do an SX -1, enter, and just move it over a little bit in this place. And all right, so there's our eyes, but we do need to give them a material. So let's tab back in object mode, make sure they're selected, and go into materials, new material. I'm just going to call this white, and choose the material, and you can just bump up this whiteness if you want. Specular, I'll take that down a little bit, maybe leave a little bit because they're the whites of the eyes. Okay, so there we have our eyes. Z back into, actually leave it in wireframe, go into one front view, and we want to get the pupils here. So let's go ahead and do a Shift A, create another UV sphere, and RX90, enter, scale it down, and G, just move into place. Let's do this one first, scale it accordingly, and we could probably just leave it as a sphere, Z into solid there. But I think what I'm going to do is just go ahead and tab into edit mode, go into 3 side view, and just go ahead and B box select all this here, X, delete the faces. And I'm not going to add the subsurf onto this, but I do want to smooth it, so just select it, hit W, and you can do shade smooth from here. Same thing as being in object mode and go into the T menu and doing shading smooth here. Okay, and let's go ahead and give it a material. New material, call this black, and change this down to black, and bump down the intensity on that a little bit, and go into 7 top view and just move this back into place. It doesn't matter too much if this is going into here because it's a black outline that we're going to see around the character, so we're not going to need to see too much of this black outline. 1 front view, go into Z, and just Shift D and move that over, and oops, make sure I got that there. Okay, and for some reason this eye is actually a little bit smaller because he's sort of beady-eyed or something, but that's okay. Make it however you like to make it. Okay, so we have our eyes, we have the body, we have some feathers. We need this brow because this brow is like one of the main things on this bird that actually makes him look angry, or at least kind of intense. So let's make this brow. It's a Shift A, and we're just going to do a cube, scale it down, and I'm going to put it right here in the middle. And what I'm looking at is the size, the width of the eyebrow here, or the eyebrows. And I'm just going to scale it along the X, SX, and just move it out, SX, SX, to pretty much how long these are. And then I'm going to tab into edit mode, do a Control R to add an edge loop, and just select twice to add that edge loop right there. Then make sure you have your vertex selected. Do a B box select on these, and just G move them up here, R rotate, and S scale. Same thing with this, B box select. Just move them up to where it should be. R rotate, G move into place, and S to scale. And tab back into object mode and 7, and we just need to move it into place. So these are black as well, so they can kind of go into the geometry a little bit. Not a big deal. And if you want to, tab into edit mode, and you can actually B box select these, and if you want to just bring those back, you don't have to, but I'm just going to bring mine back a little bit. Okay, one front view. There's our eyebrows, our angry bird eyebrows. Okay, now the fun part, the beak. This is an interesting shape. There's nothing in our primitives. If we do a Shift A, if we look, there's nothing really here that matches a beak. Maybe a cone might come close, but it doesn't even do it. So we're going to actually make this from scratch. So let me go tab back into object mode. I'm going to make this beak a separate part. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a Shift A, and I'm going to create a circle. But as soon as you create that circle, T into your tools menu and change your vertices to like 3. And you can also align the view. So you have, basically you've just used a circle to create a triangle. So T, turn that off. I'm going to control up arrow, go into full screen view here. Okay, and I'm just going to move this down to where the beak would be. And I'm not even really going to use, actually I'm just going to use 2 vertices on this. So tab into edit mode, make sure you have your vertex selected, and just delete this first vertex, X delete vertices. Okay, so you're left with this one, and I'm just going to G move this over. Grab this one, G move it over. About right here, E extrude, bring it up to here, E extrude. So I'm just making the outline of this beak. E extrude, E extrude, E extrude, E extrude down to here, and E extrude back to here. And E extrude a little bit, but then shift select your other vertices, your other vertex here, and do a Alt M and merge at last, and that'll merge those 2 vertices together. So if we A select all of this, you can see we just made an outline of the beak, which is what we want. Go into 7 top view, and we need to move this into place. We want this beak to be, again, off the geometry, but as close as we can get. And if you want to B box select these, and kind of bring those in, maybe R rotate a little bit, and B select those, bring those in, maybe rotate just a little bit, something like that. Okay, A select all of that, and actually I want this to be flat, so I'm going to bring that, let me go into my front view, make sure I am making this flat. Okay, because the bottom of the beak is going to be flat, and actually it's going to be extruded outward to a point. So A, select all, E, extrude, and just extrude that forward. And I'm going to Z back into solid so I can see what I'm doing. And you kind of have to guess here how long this beak is. It's probably not very long, but just make a guess. And just S scale this down. Something like that. And while these are selected, all these vertices, just do a F, and you just made a face. Now this face is really, I mean, this is creating an n-gon, which is, you know, more sides than a regular polygon, more than 4 sides. But that's okay because we're not being very precise here. It'll work in this case. Okay, so while we have that beak, I'm going to tab back into object mode. Control up arrow, and let's go ahead and add a modifier, add a subdivision surface. Go ahead and make it 2 subdivisions, and T smooth. So we have our nice smooth beak. Okay, and we do want to, and notice also if we go into Z, notice that we do have kind of, we have our flat surface, but see how it did come up a little bit. So if you wanted to, you can tab into that, B box select this, and go back into one front view, and just move that down a little bit. In fact, if we want to match our reference image here, B box select all that. And let's see, actually not this, just the beak there, and you can move that down a little bit, and then select all that and move it down a little bit more. And how's that look? Okay, not too bad. So tab back into object mode, let's add a material, go to our materials, new material, it's going to call this yellow, and change it to whatever color you think the beak might be. And again, if you go into Z view and into your one, if you want to, you can use the dropper here to grab the color, but that's not a good reference picture, as far as the color and everything, it's not very good, so I'm just going to leave mine a little bit lighter here. Something like that, not too much specularity, just bump that down a little bit. Okay, so that's the top of the beak, and while it's selected, I'm just going to Shift D to duplicate it, move it down, and rotate along the Y. So R, Y, 180. Just flip it upside down, and we can go into our side view to see how this is looking. And just G, move it into place, scale it. Oops, need to move that origin point. So T tools menu, origin to geometry, and just scale it down a little bit, move it into place. And if you want to, you can go into edit mode, tab in edit mode, and you can grab some of these vertices and start pulling them back, get it closer to the body so it looks like, at least like it's connected. And one front view, and just rotating it here, trying to get it into place. So if we tab out of that and just look at it, not too bad. We forgot to make this black, so select that, and we just come to our materials. We already have black material, so we can just drop this down and choose black. Okay, so we're almost done. I'm not going to worry about this color here. You can actually do some coloring in here on the faces, make it assign it a different material. But the best way to do this is actually to use a texture to get that nice rounded view there. So we do need to add some feathers. So what we need to do is I'm just going to go into side view, and Z into solid view, and Shift A, create a cube, move it over, scale it down, move it into place, SY, and tab into edit. Let's move this out a little bit, and just B, select these, scale them up, and you can grab these if you want and scale them down, and tab back into object, and let's go ahead and give it the black material. Okay, 7 top view, Shift D to duplicate. And just going to make some random feathers here. Shift D to duplicate and rotate. And just kind of move those into place. Something like that. I mean, that's not anything fancy, but if you look at some other images, it actually shows mostly the birds like in this view, and you see some of the feathers sticking out here. Kind of exaggerated because these are like, I'm putting them right on the back, but really if I select all of these, not that, and just kind of move them over and rotate them, it might look a little bit better in the final image. Okay, so I mean basically we have just created an angry bird, a very angry bird, and so what we're going to do, let's go into, see, I don't see front view there. Let's go ahead and make our background white. So go into your world settings right here, choose paper sky, choose your color here and just bump it up to white. So that's our world. If you actually, I'm not going to use a lamp here. I'm just going to X delete that lamp. What I'm going to do is I'm going to, in the world settings, I'm going to use ambient occlusion just to make it kind of a little bit quicker here. And just bump that down a little bit, maybe to 80 or something. And then we need to get our camera into position. Go ahead and save this so I don't lose anything. Control S and save it. Okay, so I'm going to select my camera. If you don't have a camera, of course, you can just do a Shift A and create a camera. I'm going to go into 7, top view, and just G, move this camera, R, rotate it, and I want to kind of get this angle this way. I want to see what the camera's seeing, so I'm going to come over to another window and just do a Control 0, and that's an easy way to get your camera. If you don't like the keyboard shortcuts, you can always come over to, once you have the camera selected, I believe it's Select, it's under View, Cameras, Set Active Object as Camera, Control Numpad 0, same thing. Okay, so I need to move this down, so I'm going to go into 3, Side View, and just going to move that down and rotate it a little bit, back it up. And I need to rotate this view a little bit. G, move it around. Just getting this view into pretty much what I want it to be. I mean, yours can be whatever you want it to be. Another way to move the image over here, like you probably see me do, you can do an R rotate. You can do the G move. You can also move away from the object, which is kind of along a Z depth. G, ZZ does that. That is a very handy trick, so you might want to remember that keyboard shortcut. You will use it a lot. So just kind of moving this into place. 7. Something like that. So now if we do a F12 render right now, you see our angry bird, and you see that the Freestyle has outlined it. But if we look at our original reference image, if you can see it, these lines are pretty dark. So if you want your lines a little bit darker, come back over to these settings. Like I said, you make sure that your Freestyle is checked, and you can change the line thickness here. But what I've done also is you can come over to the render settings, render layer settings, and come down here, make sure you have a line set. I think that's now by default, so that's okay. And line style, you can change this, and there's a thickness here as well, and I'm just going to bump this up to 6. And Freestyle has a lot of different settings that you can play around with, so feel free to use different ones of these just so you can see what they do. A lot of fun. So I'm just going to hit F12 render again, and there is our angry bird. And the nice thing about this Angry Bird, I mean, we have it in 3D now, so we can actually take any kind of view that we want, not just a 2D view, of course. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial on creating this extremely angry bird. So thanks for watching. Please subscribe, send some comments, and I'll catch you in the next tutorial.